Today's video is all about how you work on a white cyc, how you light it, some camera settings, and then how you edit it to get that bright white look. All right guys, I got something special for you. It's all about how to shoot and light in a white cyc. As you can see, I'm just free floating in white. I'm just out here hanging out in this white space, but we had a shoot today and we were shooting in a white cyc and we got done early, so I thought I'd put this video together. But basically, I'm gonna break this down into three different things. I'm gonna break it down into lighting, I'm gonna break it down into the camera settings, because that's important, and then I'll show you how you edit this so that you get this really nice looking footage, because a lot of times when you see this kind of white cyc and it's not done right, people's like skin is overexposed and things like that because they're trying to compensate to make this white. But it comes more into the lighting to make this pop and the person look good. So to break this down easily, you have a background and you have a foreground, and you're basically lighting those separately. So in my background, I have 4 lights that are up above that are basically lighting the background white and the seamless is a curve. When you work on a cyc, this is a curve so that there is no hard edges, because if there's a hard edge, you're not gonna be able to get this seamless look. Okay, so I've turned off the front lights so you can see basically how this is set up with this background lighting. I'm not lit at all. The lights in the back are just to illuminate the back wall and part of the curve. Now to fill in the foreground and to fill in me, I'm gonna light this separately. So this is the idea. You wanna light in 2 stages. You wanna light your background and then you light your foreground. You'll basically use a big soft light up above. I have 4 spaced out evenly in the space, and I'll show you with my other camera here. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 Kinos out front. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4 lights that are evenly spaced, and when you see it in this space, they're all hitting the wall so that when it comes down, it's evenly lit. You don't want to have one part of your white cyc lit more than another part. So now when we go into the front, it's the same concept. You're gonna light evenly across the entire arc. And so you arc around your center camera. So you have 2 off either side of the center camera and then 2 wider for as wide as you're trying to shoot. So for this, we were doing full body. I needed to light a scene where I could have a wide shot, 2 angles, full body. There's Rachel, by the way. Say hi, Rachel. Okay, so now I have my 4 lights here. And as you can see, I'll come around behind camera. And when you see it on the camera, there's no section that is lit more than another section. The idea is that you want to keep it completely lit evenly across the entire thing, and that's how you get that white look. If I turn on my false color, which is one of those important tools to judge exposure, especially in a setting like this. So if you're working with a green screen, a white screen, anything, this is a very easy way to see if your lighting is even. And as you can see on the screen, it's completely yellow across the entire screen. That's 80%, so I'm not blowing out the background, I'm keeping it at around 80% luminance, because as soon as you blow it out, you have no exposure to play with in post. So now when we see her, she is lit more between 60 and 70% for her skin tones, because that gives us separation from her skin tones to the white background. So now that when we go into the edit, we're gonna be able to color grade them separately. So I'll show you on my screen with the false color. As you can see, Rachel's in about the 78 range, and that's kind of where you want skin tones. If you look at her face specifically, you see how everything's gray? That's around 78%. So the idea being that you have your scale, you want your white at 80 to 90, and you want your skin tones 60 to 70, and that gives you good separation. If you go higher than that, that's when you start getting that overexposure, and you don't necessarily get the image that you want. I like this. I'm gonna come out here.
I'm doing the Macarena.
Can I do the Macarena with you?
I forgot it halfway.
1, Maca 2, Maca 3, Macarena.
Right?
I don't know.
I think it's head.
Hey, Macarena.
Yeah. It's been somebody.
Okay, and then one last thing. There are shadows here. And I know you're probably not seeing it because I've color graded this footage, but if you're standing here and looking straight down, we do have shadows kind of bouncing around from these different lights. And that's something you can't worry about, is that you're gonna see these shadows. But when you light this properly and you color grade it, all this actually disappears and you don't actually see it on the camera. So are you in my shadow?
No, I'm being your shadow.
Oh.
That's what we're doing.
Let's do, you gotta do the robot with me. let's get into the edit and let me show you how you're going to edit this footage using curves, because that's an important part. Okay, so now that we're here in the edit bay, there is one thing I want to note. If you cross over that line between your background and your foreground and like your hand goes towards like the background light, what's going to happen is it's going to start to overexpose because you're lighting for two different areas. So when you light the background separately than the foreground, the idea being that you want to keep the exposure the same. But if you're being lit by the foreground and then you enter into that background zone, and you see it here in this footage a little bit when our arms reach back, all of a sudden you're adding more light to your subject, so it's going to start overexposing. So that's one thing you got to note, especially when you're working on smaller white cycs, is that you need to still keep that separation. There needs to be a direct line where you just do not cross. So when we were shooting for our client, we had them in an area where they wouldn't actually necessarily cross. For this video purposes, me and Rachel were kind of running around, so our hands are kind of dodging in and out, but that's just one thing to note as you're watching the footage. So in terms of editing, the tools that we're gonna use is all your typical color grading tools, but I'm gonna use curves to basically make the white go full 100% white. Some clients don't necessarily want you to always go 100% white. Sometimes they'll want it at 90s. So it just depends on what kind of look you're going for, but if you want this bright white look, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go into your curves and you also want to bring up your scopes. So when you have this visual representation of your exposure values, you can see where the white is and where your skin tones are. And so what you're going to want to do is take the top marker on your curves and pull it inwards, because what that is doing is bringing your white level down lower. So instead of white being at 100, white is now at 95, 90%. And basically you're getting to the point where white is the same exposure value that you shot at for your whites, because you gave yourself that room to color grade, so you're not blowing out your footage in the shoot, but here you want to bring it to that bright white. Now from there, you could tweak your curve to play with your skin tones so that your skin tones don't get too bright. So you can bring down your skin tones a little bit on the high end so that you still have nice separation and the skin tones don't get too overexposed. But then from here, in terms of color grading, if you want to do anything more with it, add more contrast, play with the colors a little bit, that's where you can go on and do your typical color grading. For the purposes of the white cyc, you just need to play with the curves to get that exposure bright, and then the skin tones are looking good, and then from there you're good to go. So most of the time when I'm working with this footage, I might add a little saturation, a little contrast, and then the footage is looking good to go, and I got that bright white look. All right, guys, that's it. I hope this helps you when you go out and light a white cyc and you're shooting in a white space and you just want to get this kind of floating look. It's fun, right? We're in like a floating space. Bye. All right, guys, that is it. If you have any questions about lighting a white cyc, about lighting in general, put it down in the comments below. Guys, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. There's a lot of awesome filmmaking tutorials. I do a lot of camera reviews. Also, I do a lot of adventure and kind of travel stuff. So there's a lot of different content on this channel that I know you guys will like. One more thing, go check out in the description my Creator Film School. It's nuts to bolts, everything that you need to be able to have a career as a filmmaker or a creator. All right, guys, that is it. I'll see you on the next one.